I found my boyfriend and sister's messages on his phone. She's so clueless working in her office. They had photos in my bed. When I confronted her, she laughed. It's about time you figured it out. Then my parents invited us all to dinner, to make me forgive them. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Meredith. I'm 29 years old. On paper, my life looked perfect. I'd worked my tail off to become a successful software engineer. I had a beautiful apartment, a career I was proud of, and a life I had meticulously built for myself. At the center of that life were two pillars I thought were unshakable: my boyfriend of 3 years, Dean, and my younger sister, Sylvia. Sylvia, she's only 2 years younger than me, but I've felt a lifetime older. She was my shadow, my echo, my other half. We were the kind of sisters who had our own secret language, who could make each other cry with laughter over a single look. She was my person, my constant. I truly believed there was nothing in this world I wouldn't do for her, and that there was nothing she wouldn't do for me. She was my family, my blood. And then there was Dean. He walked into my life 3 years ago and felt like coming home. He was handsome, effortlessly charming, and he had this incredible way of making me feel seen. After just a few months, I knew I was in love, and I couldn't wait for him to become a part of my world. That meant meeting my family. I remember the day I brought him home for Sunday dinner. I was a bundle of nerves. My parents' approval was one thing, but Sylvia's, hers was the one that truly mattered. They hit it off instantly. I watched from the kitchen as she teased him about his favorite football team, and he fired back with a joke about her reality TV obsession. It was so easy, so natural. I remember leaning against the doorframe, a dish towel in my hand, just watching them, and this profound sense of peace washed over me. This is it, I thought. This is everything I've ever wanted. The man I loved and the sister I adored, becoming friends. My perfect, happy little world was complete. I was so blissfully, stupidly happy. I had no idea I was just watching the architects of my own destruction lay their first cornerstone. To really understand the depth of this story, you have to understand my relationship with Sylvia. From the moment she was born, I felt this fierce, primal need to protect her. She was all wide eyes and quiet sensitivity. I was the scraped knees and loud opinions. I was the older sister, and I took that job seriously. I have this one memory burned into my mind from when I was in 3rd grade and she was in 1st. There was a boy on the playground, a little terror named Kevin with a mean streak, who had decided Sylvia was his favorite target. He wouldn't hit her, he was smarter than that. He'd just follow her around, whispering things that made her cry, or he'd snatch her drawings and hold them up for everyone to laugh at. One afternoon during recess, I saw him corner her by the swing set. He ripped her drawing of a princess castle right down the middle. I saw her little shoulders start to shake, and something inside me, this hot, protective rage, just boiled over. I didn't think. I just moved. I stomped across the wood chips, my pigtails flying behind me, and planted myself right in front of him. He was a head taller than me, but I didn't care. I poked him hard in the chest. "You leave her alone," I said, my voice low and shaky with fury. "You ever make her cry again, and you'll have to deal with me." He just stared at me, his mouth open, stunned that anyone was standing up to him. He mumbled an apology and scurried away. Sylvia looked at me like I was a superhero. From that day forward, that's who I was. I was her shield. That role never really changed. When we hit high school, her biggest bully became algebra. Math just clicked for me, but for her, it was like a foreign language. Night after night, I'd find her at the kitchen table, head in her hands, tears of frustration dripping onto her textbook. I'd finish my own mountain of homework and then slide into the chair beside her, my brain already tired, but it didn't matter. "Okay, let's try this one again," I'd say, trying to keep my voice gentle. Remember the order of operations? PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I don't get it, Mayor. It doesn't make any sense, she'd wail, pushing the book away. Yes, it does. You can do this. You're smart, I'd insist, pulling the book back. I would stay up with her for hours, long after our parents had gone to bed, the only light in the house coming from the little lamp over the kitchen table. I drew pictures, I made up stories about King Variable needing to be alone in his castle. My own grades probably took a hit, but when she came home clutching a B- on her final exam, beaming with pride, it felt like I'd gotten an A+. Her happiness was my reward. It always was. My parents, they're good people at their core. They worked hard, they kept a roof over our heads, they told us they loved us. But from as early as I can remember, the rules were different for me and Sylvia. I was the firstborn, the trial run. I was held to a higher standard. Sylvia was the baby, the one they couldn't say no to. This wasn't just in my head, it was in their actions, big and small. The most glaring example was our first cars. When I turned 16, getting a car was the ultimate symbol of freedom. My parents' rule was simple: if I wanted it, I had to earn it. So, I got a job at a greasy spoon diner on the edge of town. My life became a cycle of school, homework, and work. I spent my weekends smelling like fried onions, scraping gum off the bottom of tables, and saving every single dollar. It was grueling work. I put every penny into a savings account, carefully dividing it between my college fund and my car fund. After 2 years of sacrificing my social life, I had saved up just enough for half the cost of a beat-up, 10-year-old Honda. I proudly presented my bank statement to my dad. He looked it over, nodded, and agreed to match what I had saved. I'll never forget the pride I felt driving that car off the lot. It rattled when it went over 50 miles per hour and the radio only picked up one station, but it was mine. I had earned it with my own sweat and tired feet. 2 years later, Sylvia turned 18. There was no diner job. There was no savings plan. On the morning of her birthday, she was woken up by my dad honking the horn in the driveway. We all ran to the window. Sitting there, gleaming in the morning sun, was a brand new convertible, a massive red bow taped to the hood. It was a gift. Just like that. No work required. I remember standing there, looking from her ecstatic face to the shiny new car, and feeling this pang of something I couldn't name. It wasn't exactly jealousy. It was a confirmation. A confirmation that in their eyes, her path would always be easier, paved by them, while mine was one I had to pave myself. This dynamic followed us into adulthood. I chose a demanding major in college, software engineering. My parents never grasped it. So you just type on a computer all day? My dad would ask, a confused look on his face. I'd try to explain the creativity of coding, the logic, the problem solving, but their eyes would glaze over. They just saw their weird daughter who liked computers more than people. Sylvia, on the other hand, got a degree in marketing. Something they understood. Something sociable. After she graduated, she struggled to find a job. The company I'd been working at for 3 years had an opening in their sales department, a perfect fit for her personality. I walked her resume directly to the hiring manager. I gave her inside tips on the company culture. I spent a week coaching her for the interview. She nailed it and got the job. My parents were over the moon. They bragged to all their friends about Sylvia's amazing new career. It was never Meredith got Sylvia a job. It was just Sylvia got a job. And like always, I swallowed my pride and just smiled, happy that she was happy. That's what a big sister does, right? 3 years ago, my world changed when I met Dean. Our first date was one of those rare, magical evenings you see in movies. We met for Italian food, and we talked for hours. It wasn't the usual, stilted first date conversation. We talked about everything, our childhoods, our biggest fears, our most ridiculous dreams. He had this incredible laugh that made me laugh, and a way of listening that made me feel like the most fascinating person on the planet. I drove home that night with a stupid grin on my face, knowing I had met someone special. Our relationship was easy. It was comfortable and passionate and fun. He became my best friend. After a few months, I knew I had to bring him home. The idea was terrifying. What if my family didn't see what I saw? What if Sylvia, my ultimate judge of character, gave him a thumbs down? We walked into my parents' house for Sunday dinner, and the air was thick with anticipation. My mom sized him up, my dad gave him a bone-crushing handshake. Then Sylvia came down the stairs, a mischievous glint in her eye. "So," she said, circling him like a shark. "You're the guy who's been making my sister so boring lately." Dean didn't miss a beat. "And you must be Sylvia," he replied with a wide, charming grin. I'd recognize that troublemaker look anywhere. "Meredith's told me all about you." That was it. The ice was broken. The whole night was like that. They had an instant rapport, a shared wavelength of sarcastic humor. He helped her with the dishes, and I could hear them laughing from the other room. I remember my dad pulling me aside later that evening. "He's a good one, Mare," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Don't mess this one up." I felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy. It was perfect. Too perfect. He fit into my family like a missing puzzle piece. He started coming to all our family events. He'd team up with Sylvia against me in board games. He'd help my dad with yard work. He became one of us. Looking back, I see it so clearly now. He didn't just fit in. He infiltrated. He studied my family, learned our dynamics, and found the weakest link. And the weakest link, the one person he knew he could charm and manipulate, was the person I trusted most in the world. About a year into my relationship with Dean, life threw me a curveball. The tech company I worked for went through a massive, stressful restructuring. There was a downturn in the market, and layoffs were happening every other week. It was a terrifying time. My department was short-staffed, but the workload doubled. For 2 solid months, my life shrank to the size of my computer screen. My days were a blur. I was at my desk by 7 in the morning, fueled by stale office coffee, and I often didn't leave until well after sunset. My brain was a constant buzz of code and deadlines. I'd get home, microwave some leftovers, and fall into bed, too mentally exhausted to even watch TV. Weekends, which used to be for hiking trips with Dean or brunches with Sylvia, became extra workdays. This, inevitably, created a chasm between Dean and me. Our relationship, once so easy, became strained. I remember one Friday night vividly. He'd made reservations at our favorite restaurant weeks in advance. At 6 o'clock, my boss dropped a pile of urgent revisions on my desk that had to be done by Monday morning. I had to make that dreaded phone call. "Hey," I said, the exhaustion evident in my voice. "You're going to hate me." I heard him sigh on the other end. "Don't tell me you're canceling." Again. "I'm so sorry, Dean. This project is it's out of control. I don't have a choice." The guilt was eating me alive. I felt like I was failing at everything, my job, my relationship. "It's fine, Meredith." "It's always fine," he said, but his voice was cold. There was a new edge to it, a bitterness that hadn't been there before. I guess I'll find something else to do." He said he understood, but the chasm between us grew wider with each cancelled date. Since he and Sylvia worked at the same company, they started carpooling to save gas. Sometimes they'd grab lunch together. I was genuinely happy about it. "I'm so glad you guys have each other," I told him one night. "I feel so bad that I'm never around. At least you're not totally alone." I was so grateful. I thought it was a blessing that my sister could be there for my boyfriend when I couldn't. What a fool I was. I wasn't just letting them be friends. I was handing them the time, the opportunity, and the perfect excuse to tear my life apart, piece by piece. And I did it with a smile on my face. After 2 grueling months that felt like 2 years, the project from hell was finally over. It was a huge success. I not only kept my job, but I was also given a major promotion and a substantial raise in my salary. I remember walking out of my boss's office, feeling like I could finally breathe again. The first person I wanted to tell was Dean. I was so excited to get our lives back, to make up for all the lost time. But when I tried, it was like trying to hug a ghost. The warmth was gone. He was physically there, but his mind was somewhere else. The little things were what screamed the loudest. We'd be watching a movie on the couch, and I'd rest my head on his shoulder, but he'd be stiff as a board, his attention glued to his phone. That phone. It had become a third person in our relationship. It was always in his hand, or on a table screen down. He took it with him to the bathroom. He slept with it on his nightstand, not mine. One afternoon, I was cleaning up and found a receipt from a local cafe in his jeans pocket. It was from the day before, dated at 1 p.m. 2 sandwiches, 2 coffees. I remembered asking him how work was yesterday, and he'd said he was so busy he had to eat a granola bar at his desk. I stood there in the laundry room, the crumpled receipt in my hand, my heart starting to beat a little faster. It's nothing, I told myself. He probably went out with a coworker. It's not a big deal. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being lied to over something so small. Why lie about lunch? The real turning point was a few nights later. We were getting ready for bed. I was already under the covers, reading a book. He was in the bathroom. His phone, which he had left on the nightstand, buzzed. I glanced over. A message notification lit up the screen. It was from Sylvia. The message preview just said, "You up?" My blood turned to ice. It was almost midnight. Why was my sister texting my boyfriend asking if he was up? 1,000 innocent explanations tried to form in my head. Maybe it's about work. Maybe she's having a crisis and needs to talk to someone. But my gut, that deep, primal intuition, was screaming at me. It was screaming that I was in danger. I tried to bring it up casually when he came out of the bathroom. "Oh, Sylvia just texted you," I said, my voice sounding way too high-pitched. I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes before he masked it. "Oh yeah? What did she want?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant as he picked up the phone. "I don't know, it just said you up." "Huh. Weird. Probably a work thing for tomorrow," he mumbled, quickly typing a reply and then putting the phone face down. He turned off the light. He rolled over, facing away from me. But I couldn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the image of that text burned into my mind. I was being gaslit by my own intuition, and I was losing the battle. The final straw came on a Tuesday night. The anxiety had been eating me alive for weeks. I felt like I was going crazy, constantly questioning reality. Dean had fallen asleep on the couch watching TV, a beer bottle resting on his chest. And his phone, his precious phone, was on the coffee table. It was right there. An unlocked Pandora's box. I sat on the armchair across from him for what felt like an hour, just staring at it. My heart was a trapped bird, beating against my ribs. A war was raging inside me. "Don't do it, Meredith. Trust is everything. If you look, you can never go back." But another voice, a stronger, more desperate voice, was yelling, "You need to know. You deserve the truth." Finally, the need to know one. My hands were trembling as I crept over and picked it up. It felt slick with sweat in my palm. I held my breath and opened his messages. My eyes went straight to her name. Sylvia. I clicked on it, and the world tilted on its axis. It was all there. A secret life, lived right under my nose. Hundreds, thousands of messages. Sylvia, can't stop thinking about yesterday. Dean, me neither. She was so clueless, working away in her office. Sylvia, I wish you were here right now. Dean, soon. I'll tell her I have to work late again tomorrow. I scrolled and scrolled, each message a fresh stab of pain. They had nicknames for me. The warden. The workhorse. They talked about our dates, our conversations. They dissected my life, my personality, my love for them, and they laughed. They laughed at me. Then I got to the photos. Selfies of them in his car, at that cafe he'd lied about. And then, the one that broke me. A picture of them, tangled up in the sheets of my bed. My bed. The bed I shared with him. The picture was taken from an angle that showed my favorite painting on the wall in the background. My home, my sanctuary, had been their playground. I physically recoiled, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. It clattered on the floor, the sound echoing in the silent room. The anger came then. A pure, white-hot rage that burned away the shock and the pain. It was a clarifying fire. I knew exactly what I had to do. My movements were calm, deliberate. All the trembling had stopped. I bent down, picked up the phone, and walked over to the couch. I didn't shake him gently. I shoved his shoulder, hard. Dean. Wake up. He jolted awake, disoriented. Meredith? What's going on? His eyes were bleary with sleep. I didn't say a word. I just held his phone up in front of his face, the picture of him and Sylvia in my bed displayed on the screen. I believe this belongs to you. The transformation on his face was instantaneous. The sleepiness vanished, replaced by sheer, animal panic. The blood drained from his face. Mare, wait, it's not what it looks like. Let me explain. Explain? My voice was dangerously quiet, a cold fury I didn't know I possessed. Explain the hundreds of texts? Explain the nicknames? Explain why my sister is in our bed? Please, Dean. I'd love to hear this explanation. I started reading their texts out loud. She was so clueless, working away in her office. Can't wait to get rid of the warden for the night. Does that sound about right? He scrambled off the couch, trying to grab the phone, but I held it out of his reach. The lies started pouring out of him, clumsy and desperate. We were drunk. It was a mistake. It only happened once. Your messages go back for months, Dean. Try again. When the lies didn't work, he switched to anger. He tried to turn it back on me, his voice rising. You know what? Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your job. Maybe if you actually paid attention to me instead of your computer screen, this wouldn't have happened. You pushed me to her, Meredith. This is your fault too. That was it. The last ounce of love I had for him curdled into contempt. I pointed a single, shaking finger towards the door. Get your things, I said, my voice flat and final. And get out of my life. He must have seen something in my eyes then, something that told him there was no arguing, no pleading. He started frantically grabbing his jacket, his wallet, his keys, still sputtering about how I was overreacting, how I was the one who snooped. I didn't say another word. I just stood by the door, my arms crossed, and waited. As he pulled the door open, he turned back for one last, pathetic attempt. Meredith, please don't do this. It's already done, I said, and I shut the door in his face. The moment the lock clicked, I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I just felt a cold, gaping void. And I knew this nightmare was only half over. I didn't even take my coat off. I grabbed my car keys and walked out of my apartment, my mind a blizzard of rage and pain. The drive to Sylvia's place was a blur. I don't remember stopping at red lights or making turns. All I could see was her face, laughing in those pictures. Her, my sister, the little girl I had protected from playground bullies and scary movies. I got to her apartment building and pounded on her door. I didn't care that it was after midnight. I pounded and pounded until the lights flicked on inside. A moment later, the door cracked open. Sylvia stood there, blinking in the hallway light. She was wearing a ratty, oversized t-shirt. One of Dean's. One he had left at my apartment months ago. The sight of it was so brazen, so utterly disrespectful, it felt like she had slapped me across the face. "Meredith," she said, her voice thick with fake sleepiness. "What on earth are you doing here? It's the middle of the night." "Cut the act, Sylvia," I said, pushing the door open and storming in. "I know. I saw the texts. I saw the pictures. I know everything." I waited for the tears, the apologies, the excuses. I was prepared for a fight, for a screaming match. I was not prepared for what she did next. She leaned against the doorframe, crossed her arms, and a slow, smug smile spread across her face. And then she laughed. A quiet, condescending little chuckle. "Well, it's about time," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "Honestly, I was starting to wonder if you'd ever figure it out." The world stopped. The air left my lungs. The casual cruelty of it, the absolute lack of remorse, it was more painful than anything Dean had done. "How could you?" My voice was a choked whisper. "Sylvia, I'm your sister. I loved you. I did everything for you." She actually rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't give me that martyred big sister speech, Meredith. You have always had everything. The perfect grades, the fancy software job, mom and dad fawning over you. Do you know they even changed their will to give you a bigger percentage of the inheritance because you're the responsible one? You had the perfect life, the perfect boyfriend. For once, I wanted something that was yours. And Dean, he wanted me." Every word was a perfectly aimed dagger. The jealousy she'd hidden so well for so long was finally out, ugly and venomous. She saw my life not as something I'd worked for, but as something that had been handed to me, something she was entitled to a piece of. My boyfriend included. In that moment, the little girl I'd protected my whole life vanished. In her place was a bitter, cruel stranger. "I have no sister," I said, the words feeling like poison on my tongue. "From this moment onward, you are nothing to me. Do you understand? We are done." I turned and walked out of her apartment, leaving her standing there with that triumphant smirk on her face. The tears didn't come until I was safely in my car, and they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, undiluted rage. As soon as I got back to my apartment, the rage gave way to a tidal wave of grief. My whole life had just been detonated. I was completely alone. In a moment of pure desperation, I did the only thing I could think of. I called my parents. The phone rang 4 times before my mom picked up, her voice groggy. "Meredith? Honey, is everything okay? It's almost 2 in the morning." And then it all came pouring out. I sobbed into the phone, the words tumbling over each other in a messy, incoherent flood. I told them about Dean, about the months of lies, about the pictures in my bed. And then I told them the worst part. I told them about Sylvia, about her laughing in my face, about the things she said. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear my dad pick up the extension. "Are you sure about this, Mare?" he asked, his voice full of disbelief. "Yes, I'm sure." I wept. I saw it with my own eyes. She admitted it. She was proud of it. Oh, that awful, awful boy, my mom said, focusing on Dean. To do this to you, and to your sister. Mom, it wasn't just him. It was her. She did this to me. Okay, honey, just breathe, my dad said, his voice taking on that placating tone he always used when things got too emotional. This is a shock for all of us. We'll talk to Sylvia in the morning. We are going to get to the bottom of this. We'll handle it. You just try and get some rest. They promised. They said they would talk to her. They sounded horrified. They sounded like they were on my side. I hung up the phone, clinging to that promise like a life raft. My world had been destroyed, but at least I still had my parents. At least they would see the truth and stand by me. I curled into a ball on my cold, empty bed and eventually cried myself into an exhausted, dreamless sleep, believing that things, somehow, would be made right. And right there, in the silence after that phone call, my world just hung in the balance. If you're still listening to my story, could you do me a huge favor and like this video, and just comment the number 1 down below? It lets me know you're here with me on this journey, and your support, honestly, it means the world to me right now. It gives me the strength to keep going. So please, just comment the number 1, and I'll tell you what happened next. The days that followed were filled with a deafening silence. I didn't hear from Dean or Sylvia, and I was grateful for that. But the silence from my parents was unnerving. I waited for the phone call, the one where they would tell me they'd had a serious talk with Sylvia, that they were appalled by her behavior. But the call never came. When my mom did call, a few days later, her voice was strained and she talked about trivial things, the weather, a neighbor's new puppy. When I tried to ask about Sylvia, she would shut me down. Let's not get into all that right now, honey. We just need time for the dust to settle. The dust never settled. A month went by, a month of me living in a state of suspended grief, completely isolated from the people who were supposed to be my support system. Then, my mom called, her voice brighter and more cheerful than I'd heard it in weeks. Hi, sweetie. I know things have been difficult, but we're having a family dinner this Sunday. Just us. It's time we all sat down and started the healing process. My entire body tensed up. Is Sylvia going to be there? No, of course not, she said quickly. A little too quickly. Just you, me, and your father. We need to talk. Please come, Meredith. It's important. Against my better judgment, I agreed. A part of me, a foolish, hopeful part, thought this was it. This was the moment they would finally acknowledge my pain. On Sunday, I drove to their house, my stomach in knots. I walked in, and my mom enveloped me in a stiff, awkward hug. My dad gave me a curt nod from his recliner. The whole house felt tense. My mom led me to the dining room, where the table was set for 4. I felt a small flicker of relief. Then, from the back patio, I heard a familiar laugh. It was a man's laugh. Dean's laugh. My blood ran cold. I walked numbly to the sliding glass door and looked out. And there they were. Dean and Sylvia, sitting at the patio table, holding hands over a pitcher of iced tea. They looked up and saw me. Sylvia gave me a small, triumphant smile. I turned to my mother, my voice a choked whisper. You lied to me. We had to, honey, she said, her eyes pleading. It was the only way to get you all in the same room. We have to resolve this. We can't have the family broken apart like this. Think about the holidays, about what a divorce in the family would do to us all. They made me sit down. It was an ambush. A carefully orchestrated intervention where I was the problem to be solved. My parents sat at the heads of the table, like judges. Sylvia and Dean sat together, a united front. And I sat alone. My father cleared his throat and began. Meredith, he said, in his most serious voice. Your mother and I have had many long talks with Sylvia and Dean. And we understand that you are hurt. He paused, as if expecting me to thank him for this grand concession. But love is a complicated thing. And what these two have found, it's real. It may not have started in the ideal way, but it's a true love. And as a family, our job is to support that. We want you to find it in your heart to forgive them, so we can all move forward. I just stared. I stared at their faces, these people I had known my whole life, and I didn't recognize them. They weren't just taking her side. They were erasing me. My pain, my betrayal, my reality, it didn't matter. All that mattered was preserving their perfect family picture, even if it meant painting me out of it completely. As my father's words hung in the air, a strange thing happened. The hurricane of emotions inside me, the grief, the rage, the shock, suddenly went still. A profound, icy calm washed over me. It was the calm of finality. The calm of knowing, without a single doubt, what I had to do. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I had spent my entire life trying to win their approval, to be the good daughter, the good sister. And in that single, horrifying moment, I was finally free of it. Their opinions no longer mattered. I slowly, deliberately placed my napkin on the table. I pushed my chair back and stood up. All four of them stared at me, their expressions a mixture of surprise and apprehension. They were expecting a hysterical outburst. I gave them nothing but quiet dignity. My eyes met my mother's. I have heard what you have to say. I let my gaze travel to my father, who looked uncomfortable, already regretting his little speech. Then, I looked at Sylvia and Dean. She was practically glowing with victory. He just looked pathetic. Finally, I looked back at my parents. My voice was low, steady, and devoid of all emotion. When Sylvia did what she did, I told her that I no longer have a sister. Now, I'm telling all of you. I took a breath. From this moment on, act as if I don't exist. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's perfectly made-up face crumpled. My father's mouth opened, but no words came out. Even Sylvia's smugness faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine shock. It was clear they had never, in their wildest dreams, imagined I would be the one to walk away. They thought they held all the power. They were wrong. I turned my back on them. I walked through their living room, past the photos on the mantelpiece of a happy family that never really existed. I opened their front door, stepped out into the cool evening air, and closed it gently behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't driving towards them. I was driving towards me. The aftermath was a strange combination of chaotic and quiet. For the first 2 weeks, my phone blew up. Dozens of calls a day from my parents. Long, rambling voicemail messages, alternating between anger and pleading. Then came the texts from Sylvia, dripping with fake concern and venom. I can't believe you're doing this to Mom and Dad. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. I didn't read a single text. One evening, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine, and with a strange sense of ceremony, I blocked their numbers. My father. My mother. Sylvia. Dean. One by one. With each press of the button, I felt a weight lift. It was a digital amputation, and it was necessary for my survival. The silence they left behind was vast. My apartment felt huge and empty. The loneliness was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that threatened to suffocate me some days. I had to learn how to live in a world without them. I had to break the habit of a lifetime, the instinct to pick up the phone and call my mom after a hard day at work, or to text Sylvia a funny meme. I had to go through my apartment and pack up everything that reminded me of them. I boxed up Dean's remaining clothes and dropped them at a charity bin. the hardest part was taking down the pictures. Every photo of me and Sylvia, laughing as kids, hugging at my college graduation. I put them all in a box and shoved it in the back of a closet. I couldn't bear to look at them, but I couldn't bring myself to throw them away either. My work friends, the ones who knew both me and Sylvia, were a minefield. The pitying looks, the awkward questions. I eventually had to pull my direct boss aside and explain that Sylvia and I were no longer on speaking terms and I'd appreciate it if we weren't scheduled on the same projects. It was humiliating. But through it all, there was my friend Sarah. She was my rock. She never got tired of my late-night phone calls. She let me cry, she let me rage. She showed up at my door with groceries when I forgot to eat. One night, I was telling her how pathetic I felt, how I had no one. She stopped me. "You have me," she said, her voice firm. "And you have yourself. And right now, that's more than enough." Slowly, very slowly, she was right. I started to heal. I poured all my energy into my work, and the promotion I'd gotten began to feel less like a trigger and more like an achievement. I started a new, complex project that consumed my thoughts. I even briefly consulted a lawyer to make sure my name was the only one on my apartment lease, a small, practical step that made me feel more in control. I was building a new life, a much smaller, quieter life. But it was mine. It's been almost a year now since I walked out of my parents' house. And if I could tell that heartbroken woman from that night one thing, it would be this: it gets better. It really, truly does. The path here wasn't easy. It was paved with lonely nights, therapy sessions, and a lot of uncomfortable self-reflection. I had to grieve the loss of not just a boyfriend and a sister, but the family I thought I had. I had to accept the harsh reality that the unconditional love I gave them was never truly returned in the same way. But in losing them, I found myself. I learned that my value is not determined by my relationship with others, but by my relationship with myself. I learned to set boundaries. I learned to listen to that gut feeling, that intuition I had silenced for so long. It's my most reliable guide. I don't hate them anymore. I just feel nothing. They are strangers to me now, characters in a story from a past life. I've heard through the grapevine that Dean and Sylvia are still together. I hope they're happy. Honestly. They deserve each other. A relationship founded on deceit and cruelty will eventually eat itself from the inside out. But that's their story now, not mine. My story is about resilience. It's about building a chosen family with friends like Sarah who have shown me what true loyalty looks like. It's about finding joy in the small things: a quiet morning with a good book, a challenging day at work, a phone call with a friend that ends in laughter. My life isn't a dramatic movie anymore. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and it's authentically mine. My success and my peace, that is the best revenge. I survived. I healed. And I am finally free. Thank you all so much for being here and for listening to me share my journey. Your presence and support mean more than you know. If this story touched you, or if you have a story of your own about finding strength after betrayal, I'd be honored if you shared your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue to support each other. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. Be well, and take care of yourselves.